As a lot of you will probably know, pain is emotional, it's nervous system based, and masking it and trying to eradicate the symptom is not going to address the cause. The foundation of what I teach and what I work with is to trust the body is trying to communicate something with you. So imagine your body communicating needs with you over and over and over again and building tension up, and never having that need met because you were never taught. You're always taught to override that need. So your body becomes a guide, not the enemy, not an inconvenience, but their sacred messenger that you came here to live through and express through. So healing chronic pain, chronic tension requires teaching the body that it doesn't have to brace for a life that has ended. Your body knows, your body remembers, your body keeps the score, your body is communicating with you. Welcome back. Today I want to speak all about the psychosomatic, emotional nervous system lens of pain, tension, chronic pain. I've had a big journey around this myself and a lot of deep healing. And this presents so much in my clients, especially those who are coming out of survival, healing their nervous system and things like this. And a lot of questions come up around healing bodily pain in a way that Western medicine often doesn't cover, because our answer in our culture is painkillers to remove the pain. However, as a lot of you will probably know, pain is emotional, it's nervous system based, and masking it and trying to eradicate the symptom is not going to address the cause. So we're going to talk a bit about it today and hopefully give you a bit more insight, or a lot more insight, around what some of the causes and contributing factors can be to your pain. Now, I'm not going to necessarily go so much into food, healthy eating, reducing toxins, things like that. That's kind of something that I feel like enough of us know about. This is going that layer deeper into the emotional layer, the nervous system layer, and our kind of relational inputs and our sense of safety in the world. So there's plenty of places that you can investigate low inflammatory diets and things like that. Plenty of people out there having those conversations. So chronic pain in our culture can be really confusing for people. And when you heal at a deeper level, the whole process can feel quite isolating because of the culture and society that we live in that doesn't have a lot of answers for the problems that we have. I learned this very early on in my teenage years. And in some ways, I was lucky in that fact because I had gut issues, skin issues, health issues that were recurrent, energy issues, fatigue, things like this. And I learned from a very, very early age that Western medicine didn't have answers. And so from a young age, I was introduced into natural therapies, introduced into the impact of diet and food sensitivities and herbs and homeopathics and that whole world. And that's been a massive part of my life for decades. So it was later on that I came into understanding the importance of healthy relationships to our nervous system, to our health, and healthy environments, not just around what we eat and the toxins, but the way that we treat each other and how relaxed our body is and how present we are in our relationships and how much unhealthy relational dynamics contribute to an unhealthy body. And that's really what I'm going to focus more on today. So it can feel really confusing. And I was kind of thinking this week because went to my acupuncturist, and I love Chinese medicine and I love alternative therapies because I can go and say, these are my symptoms, bang, 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 here they all are. and I get somebody on the other side that says, yep, that makes sense. Yep, this is this. These herbs, we're going to treat these meridians and all of that kind of stuff. So that to me is so incredibly important to have a space or a modality that understands you, can validate you. And a lot of people aren't getting that. A lot of people aren't getting that in our medical system. And it's not a bad thing, because that's just going to push people to explore other avenues, because our medical system isn't designed to deal with these kinds of things. It's set up to deal with emergencies, life or death, things like that, but not health, not the basis of health and thriving and emotions and healthy living. And, it's not set up to support us around our health. It's incredible for other things, but the fact that people are going there for answers is really, really misleading, because most of the time it's just there aren't going to be any. So that can feel really isolating, but there are absolutely places and modalities and lineages of thousands of years of information and study of the body that can absolutely and will absolutely be supportive. So if you're getting no answers or confusion from one place, I really encourage you to explore what else is out there. So it's not your body betraying you. This is really important. The foundation of what I teach and what I work with is to trust the body is trying to communicate something with you. It can feel frustrating, but as someone that's healed from a really, really intense chronic tension and pain, from being in chronic stress, being in fight and flight, being in survival, being in unhealthy relational dynamics, being incredibly depleted and not having my needs met and not being wired, like feeling like I was wired to self-abandon. My body was screaming at me to look after it, and all of the tension patterns and the pain was my body screaming at me in that way. So there is a need there that isn't getting met, because you can imagine when we have a need and we need something, whether it's to eat something, to rest, to have a conversation, to move our body, whatever the need is, when we get that need met, we exhale. Our body relaxes. We think, okay, if we're really, really hungry and getting agitated, we eat something and we're like, oh, I can relax. So imagine your body communicating needs with you over and over and over again and building tension up, and never having that need met, because you were never taught. You were always taught to override that need. You were never taught to listen. But there are needs under there that your body is trying to communicate with you, and there's an incredible intelligence there. It just takes patience and commitment to go in and listen. So if you have chronic pain, inflammation, autoimmune concerns, sudden shifts in inflammation, of course, seek out the right medical attention that you need, but also find supportive environments that have answers. Don't leave things because you feel that the answers might not be there, so you're going to continue to sweep them under the rug. But if you're not getting answers, understand the body is trying to communicate something with you, and then find the people and the places that have a deeper understanding of the language of the body and can actually support you better. So your thoughts, your memories, your emotions, your stress chemicals, your immune system, your fascia, your muscles, your tissues, your nervous system, it's all in constant communication, and it's all communicating one thing. That's to A, keep you alive, and B, help you to thrive and be the best version of yourself. So that communication is happening, whether or not we know how to interpret it or understand it, or interpret it in a way that actually helps us on our journey. So that's not ever to say that the communication is wrong, or the body is communicating something with us that is problematic. The symptoms absolutely may be problematic, but the communication is sacred. The communication is wired to support you. So if you can befriend your body in that way and trust your body in that way, that's the absolute number one key step in healing any of this. So pain, let's start with saying that pain is a protective signal to something that is harmful to us in some way. It's an alarm system. So that can be like a physical trauma, like there's been an accident or physical trauma and something has happened. And it can also be a response to an emotional trauma, something that has hurt us in another way. And this is the bit that we tend to miss, or we haven't been taught to understand, because we have a system set up to deal with the physical trauma and the accidents and deal with that pain. But it's more alternative and outside our system to go and seek the hurt, the support for the hurt and the pain that is on an emotional layer, or is built from being in chronic stress and survival. And so we're only starting to really get a bit better at that now. So there's one other thing that's really important to understand when it comes to pain and inflammation, in that the nervous system can become really sensitized. So if your environment, say, wasn't safe at some point, whether that was growing up or during a certain period of your life, and your body learned that to survive, I need to stay guarded. I need to stay protected. I need to stay tense. That it wasn't safe for me to relax. So in order to be okay in this situation, I have to be on. And so in order to survive, you learned to be hypervigilant. You learned to be hypersensitive. And so your body can be responding in a sensitized way long after the actual threat has passed, or you're out of that particular environment or threatening situation. So you become more responsive to signals that might not be dangerous now, but once were. And this is what we would see as hypervigilance. This is what we would see as being like jumpy or on edge, or feeling kind of everything in your environment, not from a attunement and intuitive perspective, but from a like something that's actually causing a response that feels activating, and like you kind of can't trust your environment, and it's the information coming in is one that is telling you to guard and defend, and that you're not safe, because your nervous system is always trying to gauge, am I safe? Am I not? And so all of that oversensitization can be a response to unprocessed traumas, unprocessed emotional hurt, unprocessed content from environments past, or relationships past, or even physical traumas past. And so that can lead to that increased responsiveness, which increases the tension. It increases the bracing, because we haven't yet created an environment, or just even the understanding or the support to say it's okay. You don't have to keep bracing. You don't have to keep guarding. You don't have to keep being on high alert. So you are, in that healing process, moving from being over-responsive and oversensitized to normal or low-level sensory input, to understanding that that's not a threat, and you can just allow that to be. And the things that you're actually then worried about and that are actually a concern aren't just constant everyday things, everyday stimuli and stuff like that. So your body can absolutely continue to send pain signals far after the original threat has passed. So from a trauma-informed lens, that's going to happen, like we said, when the body has learned the tension and bracing or collapse or silence or something, like shutting something down, swallowing down a need, protecting yourself, bracing, tensing, all of that self-protection are necessary to survive in a certain environment. So in that situation, you're going to have learned to override your body a little bit, or in a really massive way, chronically, maybe for a short period of time, or for a really, really long period of time. So maybe you learned to say yes when you actually meant no. You learned to smile when you were angry. You learned to people please. You learned to stay quiet when you wanted to speak up. You learned to stay when your body was activating fight and flight responses and you wanted to leave. You kept going and kept performing because you felt like you couldn't rest and switch off. So you can be remaining in these environments where your whole body is giving you signals of misalignment or things that it needs to do. And so all of those needs remain unmet. And that causes a lot of fear to build up, a lot of tension to build up in the body, which can take a little time to unravel. And so then let's go into the emotional layer. So emotions obviously aren't conceptual in that they may not accurately represent what we're seeing in reality. We can be triggered into an emotion and it not accurately reflect the situation. But emotions are physiological events. They are energy moving through our body, and not energy again in like this woo-woo conceptual type of thing. If you imagine yourself crying, and I mean really like having a good cry, your body moves like if you sob, your diaphragm contracts and releases. There's physical tears that come out. Your breathing changes. There is sound. There's movement, different movement around the chest. When you're angry, there's a certain activation and an opening of the body and a movement of energy. So when these emotions move, there are certain patterns and ways of the body moving and opening up in order to move this energy. So when that gets interrupted, stagnated, you swallow that down for a really, really, really long time, which was a huge part of my experience, the body becomes frozen and tense because those movements become unfamiliar. We don't trust the way not just the feeling of the emotion, but the actual pathway it carves out as it moves through the body and those different ways in which an emotion moves. So when you've shut down emotions or it wasn't safe to feel or express emotions, that creates a bracing, it creates a tension, it creates a guarding in the body. There is a fluidity of movement that happens with the movement of emotional energy. And that's not to say that if we can move fluidly through the body, that we're necessarily in touch with our emotions. But if you are working at the emotional layer and you are willing to feel uncomfortable emotions that you haven't tapped into and release those and feel those through, then getting fluidity into the body, opening up the body, moving in different ways is incredibly important and crucial in order to allow those emotions to move. Every culture has, except for ours, has these practices to move this energy through. qigong, yoga, dance, all these different modalities in order to Tai Chi, move energy through the body and get in touch with these emotions. So a great way that you can do this is to think like, how would you move grief through the body? What way would you move or express grief through the body, through language, embodied language? What would you do to move anger? Would you go and do boxing or running or something like that? And how would you move joy? How would you move and feel fear? Like just understanding how these things move through the body and just being willing to do things that feel different and uncomfortable in order to release the stagnation, get those emotions moving, and start to release some of those tension and holding patterns. So all of these emotions have bodily signatures, and there's a literacy to the body that we can start to understand in a way that we can allow these emotions to move. So when we stagnate these emotions, we can think things like anger. It can show up as like heat being stuck in the body, jaw tension, clenched hands, tightness in our hips, tightness and pressure in the chest. Same with grief. It can show up as pressure in the chest and the lungs because grief is held in the lungs. Heaviness, a collapse, an apathy, a sort of depression. So this fatigue, a heaviness, we're carrying the weight of something that needs to be released. That's grief. Fear can really show up as like our breathing patterns in terms of like we have a shortness of breath. So a locked diaphragm, shallow breathing, stomach and gut issues that we couldn't fully relax, tight and raised shoulders. So all of these things are super important, and getting into the body is going to help you move this through, but not just from a I'm trying to get rid of the pain, from a I am trying to understand the communication of my body and I'm trying to understand the pain so I can actually create space for it to move through, not I feel agitated by it and I just want to eradicate it or numb it out. And when I say this, I'm going to just be very clear that I also understand how hard that journey also is in terms of I don't personally take painkillers or anything like that because I believe that there is obviously an intelligence to the pain, and my healing journey has, just taken me down a path of being able to sit with that and just be with it. However, I can also understand how incredibly challenging that is. However, if we can just numb the symptom continuously, it doesn't actually make any of that communication go away. It just compounds it deeper. It's not helping us deal with the deeper layers that are underneath. And I know from my experience, there were days where I was just in bed because of the pain. Like it was really difficult just to move. So I say these things with a lot of compassion and also not to just gloss over and make it sound like it's this, beautiful experience. It can be incredibly, incredibly confronting and challenging. And it takes an immense amount of courage when you are going into these places and really going into them and healing them. And it can feel, I feel like the warrior's journey of understanding the body. So there's been so much research on pain stored in the body, and greater embodied pain is associated with increased emotional stress, as well as limited emotional attunement, limited emotional expression, and limited emotional processing. So where there is pain, greater pain, physical pain, emotional pain, that is associated with a limited understanding and ability to process emotions. It shouldn't be surprising, but sometimes it is. So in other words, when emotions have nowhere to go, or we don't have a clear pathway or supported way to move those, they don't go away, and they may and do impact then the tension in our body, the inflammation in our body, the pain, the fatigue, and the posture patterns and the movement patterns in the body. Does this mean that every pain is caused by emotion? No, some things are caused physically by something we have done physically to ourselves. However, there will be an emotional element to anything, no matter the cause. So whether the cause was physical injury or it was stress-related, relationship-related, emotion-related, any way you look at it, whatever the cause was, there will be an emotional layer to the pain. There'll be a hurt. There might be a frustration. There might be some grief. So there will always be an emotional layer. There's no physical experience in this human body, in which our feelings and our emotions aren't intertwined with it. So you can always assume that there's an emotional layer. However, whether emotional pain created it or something physical created it or something like environmental in terms of the food we're eating, the toxins we're consuming created it, it's never going to harm you to address the emotions and start to go into that landscape and address the traumas, because you might uncover far more than what you expected. So if you learnt to swallow down your voice, you learnt to hold energy inside, you'd learnt to just stop things from moving that needed to move, an expression that needed to move, you held it in. Over years, that's going to become tension. It's going to become repression. It's going to become a holding in the body, in the diaphragm, in your posture, in your shoulders, in your jaw. And then one day when the environment is different, or one day when you have more space, or one day when the capacity is there, you're going to say, why is my body so tense? What is all of this pain? And your body knows, your body remembers, your body keeps the score, your body is communicating with you all of the things that you didn't have the capacity to hear before. You weren't supported to listen to. You didn't have the tools. You didn't have the right environment. But now that things are opening up a bit and you're inquiring about these conversations and you're asking these questions, all of a sudden we have a very different opportunity. And so if your body is tense, your body is having these issues, you can find some sense of relief in knowing that, okay, there's a reason for that. And just because I wasn't able to see it before, that doesn't mean it's necessarily this total random thing that's just coming up now. This can be years and decades of stuff and content and bodily responses that has been overridden. So this kind of point that I want to talk about follows on from what we've already been speaking about. And that is that the tension builds in our body through repeated inhibition of instinct. Tension becomes fluidity when we're able to respond to our instincts and our bodily impulses in a way that moves that energy through to relative completion. Meaning there's either an external cue from the environment or an internal cue from within your body that tells you, this is what I need. This is what I need to do. This is how my energy needs to move. This is what I need to do, whether it's the environment, someone toxic comes into your field and so your body says, I need to get away from this. Or you wake up in the morning and your body says, I need to eat. So there can be these external cues and there can be these internal cues of like, oh, it's hunger just because of the time of the day versus, oh, I'm now having a response to something that has come in from the external environment. And so tension builds up when we've overridden those impulses. So those tension patterns aren't random. They've happened through repetition over time. And just because people normalize it, that doesn't mean it's okay. Doesn't mean that the patterns aren't still what they are. So the more you can trust your instincts, the more you can stop splitting from what you feel needs to move through you and how you feel you need to operate versus how you actually do, the more fluid the body will become and the tension patterns will start to release. What I'll say in that is that as these patterns come to the surface, the more capacity that you have, whether that's because you're in a better environment or you suddenly have the capacity because your lifestyle has changed, your circumstances have changed. What often happens is we notice a lot more intensity first. So it's not like, oh, I can feel these things now and let them go. It's like, oh, I can feel these things now and it's just going to be a lot of confronting information that I have to face for a while. So it's not like, oh, we just get space and now I can release the tension and relax. I have to feel through those layers and sometimes they can run pretty deep. And I'm speaking from experience. It may not be your experience, but speaking on the other side of having to sit with a lot of that. So let's talk about the nervous system a little. We've touched on this a bit, but let's go into it with a little more depth. And so your nervous system is what decides what feels safe and when you feel safe. So it's always asking, like we've said, like, am I safe? Am I okay? Can I relax? Do I need to stay on? So if your answer of your body is no, I'm not safe, so then you might move into fight or flight, which is a mobilization of energy, or it's a mobilization of anger. It's a mobilization of tension and adrenaline and energy moving through the body. It's also a shutting off of digestive function so you can fight or flee or get away. So you might move into more of a freeze response where you kind of collapse or go numb. You kind of just make yourself really small and quiet or leave your body. You can go into a fawning response, which is the people pleasing and the acting really nice in order to not aggravate the people around you. So when your body is stuck in those protective responses, whatever those are, your body is going to prioritize survival over repair. So your body's going to prioritize survival over repair, and that's really important to know because chronic stress has, obviously we know, massive effects on the body and contributes to basically every disease out there, almost every disease that we know of. And continual repeated activation of these stress responses are going to have a massive impact on your health. Because if you are prioritizing survival over the repair of your tissues, over the relaxing, over the integration, if you were in relational environments where there was constant conflict and no repair, So you were stuck in survival. We're now moving towards repair around and healing around tension and pain and inflammation. So you are prioritizing something completely different that you haven't been able to prioritize in this way to this depth before. So you're shifting that prioritization. And also understand that the stress responses in the body and your nervous system not feeling safe will worsen the pain. So we want to, as best we can, try to reduce the stress and have stress management practices and things in place and be putting ourselves in places and environments where we can mobilize this energy, where we can move it, where stress is reduced, have relaxation-based practices so that we're not, continually adding that stress and those survival responses. Because if it's already there and you already have tension and pain and all of that built up, and you're not prioritizing repair more than you're prioritizing survival, whether you're doing it consciously or not, we're already trying to repair what has happened in the past and things that have happened that we hadn't addressed or didn't have the capacity to address in the past. But now you're, adding more on top of that. We've got to make sure that repair is the priority more often than not if you want to get on top of it. So healing chronic pain, chronic tension requires teaching the body that it doesn't have to brace for a life that has ended. But if you are still creating from that same place and you're creating those same tension patterns and you're creating those same stress patterns, then that reality hasn't ended for your body. And that's okay because it can take a while to release those patterns. But as much as you can, prioritize the healing, prioritize the repair, prioritize letting your body exhale, letting your body breathe, letting your body release that tension. And you'll start to see those significant improvements and you'll start to create from a new place that doesn't involve you being so punishing to yourself and to your body. So really important to understand that obviously our healing is not about numbing the pain or forcing it away or getting frustrated with it and wishing it wasn't there, even though that might be part of your experience. It's changing the conditions that made the tension and the inflammation necessary, whether that's diet, lifestyle, relationships, stress patterns, movement patterns, what you're consuming, what you're taking in, the environments that you put yourself in. The smartest people, the healthiest people understand that your body is an ecosystem and it's absolutely all of those things. We kind of have been misguided or misled in like, oh, I have pain. There is this one thing and then this one solution. Take this tablet. Anyone who actually understands the body and understands the landscape of the body and actually understands healing understands that that's going to be completely unique to you and it's not going to be one problem, one fix. It's going to be the whole ecosystem of your life and little shifts here and one thing's going to have a ripple effect over here. If we're very black and white, which can happen inside of when we're really desperate or there's a particular wound there and we just want one single answer, you can have, one thing, but understand that when we maybe heal it, say you're like, I just, need some relief and I'm going to go get body work and that's the answer. I'm going to get massage. That relaxation or that releasing of the tension is hopefully then going to open your awareness up to, hey, I don't feel like this in these situations, or money is a big stress for me right now, or I haven't been eating the healthiest, or this particular relational environment feels unsafe or toxic for me. So as long as we're just continually opening those channels of awareness, then you might have, your particular pathway in. But what it should be opening up is doorways to understanding that the solution is going to be multifaceted and not complex in a elusive way, but complex in that it's not black and white. It's going to be the way that you move in all areas of your life, and it's not just this one thing and then this one solution. So healing, let's talk about some of the things that would be involved in that. If we're talking about the ecosystem of your body, that's going to be things like your nervous system regulation. So your breathing, your engagement of the senses to stimuli that feels nourishing and pleasurable rather than overwhelming and threatening. Movement, sounding, rest, creating, being in nature. Titration and exposing ourselves to easeful and safe environments in digestible chunks. This doesn't mean being calm all the time. You can listen to the last episode on emotional and nervous system regulation, what that actually is. That was last week's episode. But this is about digesting and taking in a sense of goodness from our environment and our experiences at a rate that we can actually digest and integrate. You're also going to heal through emotional regulation. So feeling things that have been suppressed. That's not just emotions in terms of like anger, joy, fear, disappointment, resentment, excitement, things like that. It's also the felt body in terms of, I feel this, therefore that means I need this. Like I feel hunger, or I need to go to the bathroom. It always blows my mind to the extent we are still chronically overriding those basics. Like I'm just going to be productive, and hyperfixated on these things. And my body is building tension, because I haven't been to the bathroom, I haven't eaten, I haven't taken a break, I haven't breathed properly. It can be great to be obsessive, but your body, when your needs aren't met consistently and repeatedly, is going to build tension. It's going to build inflammation. You're not going to be able to relax. So we have to be connected to the body in that way and saying, okay, I can meet these needs. I'm listening and I'm paying attention. It's also moving the anger that needs to move, feeling the grief that needs to move, using the words. For me, a huge part of healing the tension in my body has been doing this content and learning to use my voice. My voice was so suppressed. And so a big part of doing my work has been, it's been part of that healing process, has been to work, to speak, to use language, to breathe through the communication, because speaking up and communicating and using my voice felt threatening. Emotional regulation, emotional expression is also creating boundaries, learning to say no, learning what a yes is, learning to communicate the things and reclaiming the way the body communicates those things. Healing is also going to be unwinding attention patterns. I am a massive kind of non-negotiable advocate for weight training for women for multiple reasons. You're going to hear about it from a health perspective in terms of your bone health as you age, all of those things. That should be convincing enough. But when it comes to kind of these more emotional layers, which a lot of the women that I work with kind of, they don't speak in those real pragmatic languages. They're more interested in the emotional and the energetic landscape. And if that feels justified, then sometimes that's easier and more motivating for them to take action. And so from that perspective, your tension is it's a holding and it's a bracing. It's also, I don't want to say weakness from a sense of like you're weak. Like if you survived challenging situations that created a lot of tension in the body, that's an incredibly strong thing to be able to do. However, a tense muscle is weak and tight. A fluid muscle, or one that's not tense and that's operating well, is strong and fluid. So we're always looking for things that build strength and fluidity in the body, and weight training does that. So weight training builds that strength. It puts more fluids into the muscles. And then I would also be doing some sort of creative movement, whether that's like yoga, dance, things like that as well. We want mobility, we want functional movement, and we want fluidity and space in the body. So personally, I do 4 dance classes a week and I weight train. I try, depending how many dance classes I've got, if we're on holidays or whatever, between 3 and 5 times a week. So that is kind of, depending on what season of your life you're in, if you've got young children and all of that, that might not be so much of a possibility. So don't get overwhelmed by that. But adding something in there that is creating the strength and the fluidity and is giving not only the energy somewhere to go, but it's giving it a strong foundation and a holding in which your body says, actually, I can survive these situations. Because what creates tension and weakness is I have this fight or flight response, I have this activation in my body, but because I haven't been able to mobilize it, I haven't actually created the strength. Like if you have fight or flight, that should mean that you are fighting or running. So you were engaging your muscles. You are engaging parts of your body. You're moving that energy through, but instead you've created tension and you haven't actually worked those muscles. So working those muscles and moving that energy through is crucial. And not only are you going to move the energy through, but you're actually going to teach your body that it's safe, because now I'm strong. Now if, somebody comes at me, I feel much more confident in knowing that I can actually stand up for myself and defend myself, because I feel strong and I feel capable. And that it just has to be a truth for every woman. So unwinding those tension patterns, that's one part. Also noticing where the body grips. Allowing yourself to breathe, allowing yourself to release the force, getting body work, giving yourself permission to let go. Understanding that you may feel tense and what can I do now to allow myself more ease? Because, okay, I don't feel safe, so what can I do that gives me a sense of ease and comfort? So letting your body and teaching your body slowly over time that softening doesn't mean danger. And an important part of having a strong body is that when you are at rest, you trust that you're still responsive to your environment. So you can rest because you don't feel just weak and tense. You feel strong and able to respond to anything that might be a threat. Also changing in terms of healing, like we've said, changing the patterns that keep repeating or recreating the pain and the tension. This is the hardest part. And you don't do this all at once. You just do it in little itty bitty chunks. So it's not just this inner process. It's the decisions and the choices you're making about the environments you're putting yourself in, the people you're relating to, the choices you're making. Maybe it's your job. Maybe the boundary isn't there in a relationship. Maybe the pace of something isn't sustainable. Maybe your body is saying no more than you can actually say no out loud. So all of these things are going to contribute. And then a really, really important one is spiritual reconnection. So pain and inflammation and tension can really disconnect you from things like trust and faith and pleasure and intuition and devotion, because there's a spaciousness connected with all of those things. So healing should reconnect you and reconnect your body with a sense of sacredness. That can be hard when the present moment feels challenging or it feels like there's a lot of suffering. But reconnecting to that can be the thing that helps release that suffering. And you see the body more, and the body is this physical manifestation like the earth, as something sacred. So rather than a problem to fix or a problem to eradicate, you see it more as something sacred and a relationship to be with, to be in. Like instead of that, one symptom, one solution, you start to see the body as an ecosystem. Like we see the earth as an ecosystem and this constant communication and relationship. Not there's a problem. What can I do to fix it? So your body becomes a guide, a genuine guide. Again, not the enemy, not an inconvenience, but their sacred messenger that you came here to live through and express through. And so we may as well learn the language rather than be in constant conflict with it. So let's wrap it there for today. If you want to go deeper into healing these things and healing your relationship dynamics so you can create relationships that feel secure and nourishing and emotionally connected, then you can click the links in the show notes. We have a free quiz and a free training, and you can learn how to work with me deeper from there. See you guys.